What's up, dudes? Max here, back with another Real Talk episode, and unlike the usual Real Talk episodes, I wanted to focus this one in the upcoming release of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. There's been some recent interviews with the developers of the game and the producers talking about character selection and a lot of things that are very hot topics right now that I quickly wanted to cover, kind of get an understanding of where they're coming from, as well as my take on the whole situation. Now, when it comes to this game, I know a lot of people are still looking forward to it in the public eye, but at the same time, it's being heavily scrutinized for a lot of very interesting reasons, to say the least.
I'll take that as a yes.
Dude, Cap, you look weird as fuck!
Can the ladies come out to play?
For you, Rocket, anything.
Yeah. It feels forced as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Done a lot of hard time.
His face.
No.
Yeah, Rocket looks equally as creepy.
He looks more like a rat.
Yeah, no, he doesn't as much look like a raccoon, he looks like a funky squirrel.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in terms to the respect of the characters and a lot of the long-running legacy of characters that doesn't exactly seem to be preserved in some ways in Marvel Infinite, when usually a series like this, or a game like Marvel vs. Capcom, is all about the preservation of the character's legacy and their looks, and being able to smash them together against a series of other characters that are equally just as awesome looking. And right now, Marvel Infinite is kind of stuck in between a crossroads, because I do feel some sides of the roster do look fantastic, and some other sides of the roster absolutely do not. Now, before I get into everything, I kind of have to give my take on this whole situation, simply because I do not have a personal investment in a game like Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite performing well, or selling well, or getting tournament entrants, or anything like that. Specifically when it comes to fighting games and the fighting games I cover, I like just covering the stuff that I really enjoy, and I don't mind dabbling into other things that I might not normally play, just to kind of show it off and give people an example that this is stuff that's out there and you can absolutely give it a shot. I might not return to some of those games, but I do enjoy the time I have with them. But the games that I like to go back to are the ones that I mention frequently in conversation, that I always kind of pick up as an example of, man, King of Fighters 14 was so much fun. I can't believe how good Guilty Gear Xrd Revelator is, and things like that. I like talking about those games because they are specifically shining pinnacle examples of things like great gameplay, great presentation, great graphics. Tournament performance and FGC metrics really don't have any impact on the games I cover on this channel, simply because I feel that if people want to get into that stuff, there are plenty of other avenues to understand the esports side of fighting games. I specifically like covering fighting games for different reasons. The video gamey aspects. How fun are they? I think fun should be a priority over balance. At the same time, I feel that things like presentation, art design, sound can be just as equally important as gameplay aspects when it comes to fighting games. To me, it's about the entire package. Now, to talk about this conversation and everything that sparked it, let's quickly look at an interview that took place with GameSpot, as well as a couple producers of the game. Speaking directly in regards to X-Men characters, classic characters that aren't making appearances in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, they direct the question to the producers, specifically citing, how do you guys feel that people are hung up in terms of the roster of characters? The biggest response to focus on is this one, specifically stating that if you were to actually think about it, these characters are just functions. They're just doing things. Magneto, case in point, is a favorite because he has an 8-way dash and he's really fast, right? This is pretty much the complete opposite antithesis when it comes to fighting games, in my personal opinion. I play characters simply because they are awesome, as well as wanting to do awesome stuff with that character. If they happen to have the tools that make them a top tier, or have the ability to do ridiculous combos, then by all means. But it really comes down to if you make a connection with that character. Peter later goes on to explain other characters like Nova and other Tri-Dash characters that you can use that are kind of similar to Magneto, that you probably want to try them out instead. But in my opinion, Magneto isn't really Magneto just for the sake that he has an 8-way air dash and he's fast and he can rush you down like crazy while having different abilities. And Magneto is Magneto because he's Magneto. Like, he is the epitome of the X-Men bad guy, and he looks absolutely awesome. A lot of this is because of Jim Lee's X-Men back from the 90s. Magneto was epically iconic back in the day, and not because he had a moveset. I think they could change Magneto's moveset completely and people would still be thrilled that he's in this game. Now, I understand that there's a huge amount of memes, there's a huge amount of function memes and talking about fighting game characters being boiled down to functions instead of design aspects as well as fun gameplay and then visually and audio. Like, I get it, but at the same time, I don't feel that Combo Fiend purposely meant to set this out there. I do feel that the guy was answering a question simply because it appears they are kind of dodging the X-Men questions really hard right now and seeming to do anything not to talk about that. Case in point, when the other producer, Michael, was talking about the game, in specific regards to the X-Men characters, he had this to say. A lot of fans wanted to see a character like X, so they brought him back. Then we also talked to Marvel very closely about their future roadmap and what's going to be happening. Your modern Marvel fan, maybe they don't even remember some of the X-Men characters, but they know some of the Guardians characters or Black Panther, you know what I mean? The X-Men characters are ridiculously iconic. They are the staple of Marvel to a lot of people. Sure, the Avengers and everything that we know of the current MCU is the current limelight of what they're working on, and that is very obvious when it comes to Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, but the X-Men didn't go anywhere in terms of popularity, which is really concerning considering the fact that they're essentially asking us to kind of forget about the X-Men characters and play someone like Black Panther or a Guardians of the Galaxy character instead. Both of these accords from the producers right here do feel like they're somewhat on the same level. They seem to be trying to get us off of the X-Men vibe and more into the characters that they can use vibe. And this is where things get kind of interesting and a little weird, and really what I wanted to talk about. I don't personally feel that Michael, much less Peter, actually want to communicate this specifically about these characters. I feel that this is a specific jargon of PR talk that just kind of came out in the wrong way, but at the same time, it's very concerning because what they're kind of pushing makes me feel like this game isn't for me anymore, which hurts, man. I made a couple of messages earlier on Twitter saying that this overall entire conversation just makes me really sad. As a Marvel vs. Capcom fan, I hold on to these games. They are a legacy of games going all the way up into Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 that was rooted in X-Men characters. And it's not just the X-Men characters that are missing from the game that make the game kind of feel a little weird in terms of its roster right now. The roster is the most important aspect of a Marvel vs. Capcom game. And from what they've showed off so far and what is rumored to be available at launch, it's pretty dry, man. There are some interesting takes in there, but for the most part, these games are supposed to be built upon their roster, and right now it is easily one of the weakest aspects of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. I won't lie, I think Black Panther and many of the characters do look really damn cool, and I'm overall very thankful that Strider is in the game as well as X, so I feel like there is absolutely still something there for me. It absolutely seems like there is a Marvel initiative going on with this game in terms of the character selection and a focus on the MCU. I would like to be proven wrong with that desperately, but based on all the evidence we have and everything that has been rumored and leaked that has eventually came true, it seems to appear to be that way. I'd like to hope that somewhere down the future of this game, there is a possibility for us to see ridiculously awesome anticipated characters like Gambit, Return of Wolverine, Magneto makes a comeback, Sentinel. These characters are the Marvel side that I'm mostly concerned about, but on the same side, there's things on the Capcom side that I'm really curious about too. For the most part, a lot of the Capcom side is ridiculously dry as well, and outside of a character like Jeddah, which is rumored on top of the Darkstalkers roster that might make it into the game, I think that's really cool, but there needs to be more of that. There needs to be more in this roster that elicits a, oh wow, they're bringing that character back? That is super awesome. Because there just isn't a lot of that right now. I don't want this to be all bad news because there are aspects of this game that are ridiculously intriguing to me. I am very much still anticipating the release of this game and plan to make content on it simply because there are still quite a few characters in that roster that I'm very intrigued to play, and I want to just know more about the combo system, the gameplay style. The gem system in the game changes everything dramatically in terms of what the characters can do, albeit some seem a little overpowered right now. I think that's good. I feel that the possibilities in a game like this, especially when we were worried that there would be a very low skill ceiling similar to something like Street Fighter V, would interject its way into Marvel Infinite. I'm really happy to see that the initial gameplay impressions that I had at E3 kind of alleviate that. That was the feeling I had at E3 after playing that story mode demo, which left me very depressed after that night before E3. I got to the show floor, arrived at the Capcom booth, and played a whole bunch of the game. I really don't want to come across to the Marvel or the Capcom guys or any of you guys on this channel that I'm hating this game in a specific way. I want to come across as someone that legitimately loves the Marvel vs. Capcom series and wants to give some constructive criticism, because I really, really want there to be some answers in regards to this stuff. If there is X-Men characters in the future, I want them to at least address it. I want them to address the fact that we do have concerns with the graphics. I want them to address the fact that we think that some things just don't look as good as they should, and that there are going to be fixes on the horizon. Like I said, I was immediately relieved that the game seemed to look a bit better than the Marvel Infinite demo. Not incredibly better, but there was some fidelity changes that made me think, oh, maybe they are aware of this stuff and they are doing something about it. But at the same time, the focus on the game in terms of the casual market is on that story mode, and I don't know if it's going to do a lot for the game based on the demo. Like, really, I would almost say that just having arcade mode endings for a game like this and having a big story mode that is in the vein of what was available in the demo might not do a lot for it. Like, a lot of people forget that Street Fighter V had a story mode that came out back in last July. They forget that this game had this huge update that was available that changed a whole bunch of stuff in terms of what people wanted in terms of single-player content, and just because it didn't have its arcade mode, it did get a story mode. It's just that a lot of people forgot about it because it was ridiculously forgettable. I feel that's going to be a similar case with Marvel Infinite, where the story mode might just be ridiculously lackluster, and I feel like I might be one of the most interested people in something like a Marvel vs. Capcom story mode, and after that demo, I just am like, well, at least the gameplay's good. I'm not one of the guys that's out there wanting Capcom to fail at everything. Resident Evil 7, as a perfect example, is something that I absolutely loved this year. It still remains to be my game of the year for 2017, and there are people at Capcom that are making some great decisions, but it seems like the fans of this series and the people that are going to be purchasing the game, and if not supporting the game after the game's launch, need to be reassured of this. They need to be reassured that they are being listened to, that our suggestions are being taken into account in terms of what's going to be happening with the future of the game. I want to be faithful that it is going to be awesome, that the roster is going to be ridiculous, that we're going to see characters like Gambit and Sentinel and Magneto and X-Men characters and classic Capcom characters, Asura, Power Stone, Onimusha, just the list goes on forever. The amount of pure legacy that exists in the Capcom and the Marvel side is absolutely there, and currently doesn't appear to be preserved in the base roster of Marvel Infinite. I would love for them to come out and just start announcing stuff, just letting us know that the future of the game is going to have more, but they've already put themselves in kind of a sticky situation, because at the very first trailer of the game, there was additional DLC announced. Meaning that characters like Sigma and Black Panther and any of the others that compose the 4 other characters of the 6 are going to be added either at launch or at a later time, that we don't know. But those characters are going to be super important. If they're X-Men, we need to know that they're going to be X-Men. We need to know that they're going to be classic, awesome Capcom characters. I want to be surprised by Marvel Infinite. I want to be surprised by what they can do with the roster of this game in terms of the online connectivity, the modes, everything like that. It sets up perfectly for something like a 2 versus 2 game, which can allow for couch multiplayer. How awesome would it be if 2 and 2 people could be playing this game 4 players side by side? There are so many chances with Marvel Infinite that I feel aren't really being grabbed upon right now, and maybe saved for a later date. Either way, I just want to know more. I want to know what their decision-making was behind this stuff, much less where the future of the game is going to go. And it's not even out yet. And that's kind of the most disconcerting part of everything right now. People want more information. I don't feel like people want to jump at this game's throat. I know some do, but I just want to be happy about something. I want to be thrilled about a character's inclusion, whether or not he's DLC or not. They're in a very sticky situation, like I said, because, well, people like me, being a hardcore fighting game and Marvel vs. Capcom fan, if they do add X-Men characters or classic Capcom characters from previous Marvel vs. Capcom games, eventually as DLC down the line, while I am excited, it's essentially a monkey's paw scenario, because they're DLC characters. They're not in the core roster, and they're charging people accordingly for content down the line. While I'm happy that those characters will be added, it's gonna piss a lot of people off. To wrap this up, I just want to be reassured about the future of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, because they're already talking about the future in terms of its DLC characters and the roster that's available. I'm very much looking forward to playing more of this game, to understanding more, to playing the characters that I do like in the roster currently, because there is a lot of redeemable factors about this game that I do enjoy, especially after playing the Versus demo at E3. I want to experience more of that as soon as possible, and I'm very much looking forward to Capcom and Marvel reassuring us of those reasons very soon. Like I said, guys, Marvel vs. Capcom means a lot to me, and I want to see this game do well. I want to see them hopefully take a lot of the suggestions and requests and the nuances that we're talking about and maybe address them in a different way. I prefer them just to say that, hey, we're listening to you guys, we know what characters you want, and we're going to work very hard at it, especially considering that the first thing we heard about the inclusion of characters like Doctor Doom, the inclusion of X-Men characters which were not there on the first trailers at the PlayStation Experience back in 2016, there was a line that we kept hearing from the producers of the game directly at the event when we were asking them of this, and it was that the legacy is not lost. The legacy of those characters that you guys know about is going to be preserved in some way. They were answering with those questions and this comment directly at that show. So I just want to hear more of that. I just want to be reassured that there's going to be some awesome stuff in the roster to come soon, and maybe not exactly what it looks like right now, which is a very MCU-focused game with a lot of very safe picks on the Capcom side that are characters that have returned from Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Either way, all this crazy stuff that's going on with the game right now is not going to stop me from making content, but it's also not going to stop me from being critical about the things that I'm very much looking forward to in a game like a Marvel vs. Capcom title. I'm looking forward to your guys' input on this as well. What are you looking forward to being fixed in terms of the presentation of Marvel vs. Capcom? Are you looking forward to a roster of characters? Are you looking forward to gameplay mechanics? I don't want to go on this for too long because talking too much about Marvel Infinite gets me upset. I was really happiest when I was playing the game. Because the more I think about it, as well as characters missing from the roster and potential characters like Leon should have been Chris, so many things like that, I really want to just play more of the game because that is where I was the happiest. As always, dudes, thank you a ton for watching. I'll be back with more updates to Marvel Infinite as soon as they're available. My name is Max, and I'll see you next time.